Right, I'm with Senator Lyndon Farnham, who's lodged a proposition, now an amendment to his proposition, to establish some sort of Ministry of Justice, which is a subject after my heart. What's it all about, Lyndon?
Well, I feel that we should have proper political accountability for the justice system and ministerial oversight for running that particular part of society.
Which part of it? How embracing will it be?
I think it needs to be as all-embracing as possible, and I became interested. There's always been, justice has always been a subject close to my heart, but I became more interested in it when I was recently lobbying the Privy Council over the abolition, or the proposed abolition, of the island-wide mandate, or the reduction in the island-wide mandate in 2010 and 11. And I then read up about how the UK had dealt with it and formed their own Ministry of Justice in 2007. And I'm not suggesting that we follow exactly their model, but there are similarities.
Strange anomalies do throw up, like we've got the Chief Magistrate currently in jail. He can't be sacked locally. Presumably that's the sort of issue that could be picked up if there was a local ministry.
It could be looked at, but there are complications in relation to the Crown. I mean, the Crown is the UK Crown, and we can't carry out the duties of the Crown, but that is something that perhaps with a political will on both sides of the channel could be looked at in the future.
But a Jersey magistrate doesn't really need to be a Crown appointment, does he?
I wouldn't have thought so, but I'm inexperienced, but I would hope those sort of appointments we could make ourselves.
Prosecution of people, police department, police prosecution is being more and more separated from the local Crown officers. Again, that's something that could be brought well in under a Ministry of Justice.
Well, it could be, of course. An element of control of the criminal justice system comes with the Office of Minister for Home Affairs. But we lack real political accountability. And if we look at the non-ministerial governments that exist in the island, and they include the Greffier, the Viscount, the Bailiffs office, to name but a few, there should be, I think, for the protection of those officers, some proper political...
Well, a proper career structure is part and parcel of what I've always thought, because there was an issue many years ago where there was no further advancement. I think it was in the office of Greffier, and there was no further advancement. But if you had a proper career structure, people could literally come from university or even from school, get into the ministry, train up, be lawyers, be assistants, whatever, within the system, and they would have a proper career, proper pensions, that would be advantageous, wouldn't it?
It would be hopefully a byproduct of, if my proposition or an element of it is successful, then I think it opens the doors for a lot of opportunities. I
mean, presumably other small territories do have the same sort of thing. I know Guernsey hasn't quite got this, but presumably other places do have it. The small the islands, the ex-British islands.
If I'm honest, Mike, I haven't done extensive research in other small jurisdictions, but I think it's a widely recognised fact now in modern society, and especially smaller societies who have tended to be a little bit behind the big democracies in the way they govern themselves, that justice is an important political portfolio to be for politicians to be held accountable for.
One of your fellow states members, Deputy Higgins, has got a proposition kicking around at the moment about translating fairly basic text from French into English. Again, that's the sort of issue which a ministry presumably could grab hold of.
Ministry of Justice could help with that, and it also offers an opportunity to sweep up a lot of other items that are sort of lying around or being pushed between pillar and post, such as human rights, for example. And when the committee system ended and the ministerial system began, what was set up was never intended to be a long-term thing. It was a starting point, and here we are 6, nearly 7 years on, and we haven't really done anything with it. And I know that Privileges and Procedures and the Machinery of Government Subcommittee are looking at it. But it's a good time now, I think, to really be discussing these ideas with some real intent to do something.
Obviously, the most contentious part, or probably one of the most contentious, would be the role of the bailiff. And obviously Lord Carswell did come out and say his committee, which was made of 2 local lawyers and a lawyer's wife, included on the committees, wasn't just Lord Carswell, they did recommend that the bailiff's role should be split from the States. He shouldn't be in the States.
Oddly enough, that was probably the only thing he provided clarity on.
He did.
The rest was a bit ambiguous.
It was indeed.
I think it's too early to comment. I'm personally speaking, I'm quite comfortable with the position as it stands. I'm a Jerseyman. I have a huge respect for the office of bailiff. He is our leading citizen, and I have never encountered a problem, but I do understand it can be viewed.
I think Carswell was a little bit reluctant to be drawn, but I think they saw that the sort of McGonigal case and the Barclays case in Sark, Guernsey, those sort of decisions will come our way. And of course the Lord Chancellor's role in the UK was in fact very much brought about, its change, its diminution was very much brought about by the McGonigal case in Guernsey. So it can come at you from unexpected quarters, can't it?
Yes, it can, and we must be prepared.
The role of the Privy Council is something you've been interested in. You've raised an issue there. Would that be affected by what you're proposing?
No, I don't think so. Although we would not be able to appoint our own judges and bailiffs and so on, because they are Crown appointments, and the Crown is as prescribed by Parliament. So we can't make appointments, but because of the way it's set up. And I think that's fine. I'm quite comfortable with that, how it happens at the moment. But sort of as you move further down the line, perhaps we could look at, for example, magistrate appointments. I don't know. I mean, as we've talked about briefly, that we have a situation where the magistrate is now incarcerated, but technically, to the best of my knowledge, he has not been removed from his post as yet.
No, indeed. Obviously, one of the other sticking points is having a ministerial department, because obviously, if again, a proposal at the moment to reduce the number of States members to 42, ironically from the Electoral Commission, as we all know, led by a former bailiff, that's to reduce the numbers makes it more difficult to establish another ministry. It doesn't have to be a ministry, but I would think in practical terms, if it's going to be a very large, all-enveloping department, it would have to be a ministry.
Yes. Possibly, but in the short term, well, first of all, can I just address the Troy rule? I think if the states are going to be reduced to a number somewhere in the low 40s, whether it be 42 or 44, whatever, is eventually decided, then the Troy rule, as it stands, is probably unsustainable. Now, although that might cause alarm for some people, because they might think the government then could become unwieldy. On the other side of that, I think it could create opportunities. I would like to see more assistant ministers. I'd like to see more ministers with responsibility, and I'll address how that can be done in a minute under the States of Jersey law. Because when we had, I think, 29 committees at one stage, 29 committee presidents and 29 committees, I remember in one session I served on 3 or 4 committees at the same time. And despite the committee system being cumbersome and sometimes slow, everybody was involved in the government of the island. Now, we could have more of that if there was enough trust in the Assembly to appoint more assistant ministers and maybe other ministers. You don't have to have a separate department to be a minister, because I have found out that under the States of Jersey law, the Chief Minister can bring to the States a proposition to appoint a minister for justice as one of his assistant ministers. We've just been speaking about the potential for a foreign ministry or foreign minister, and I think that's a good idea, because really we're changing the terminology. When Sir Philip Balash, who has been given responsibility for external affairs, represents us overseas, his title is Assistant Chief Minister. Now, he can be, under the States of Jersey law, if the states approve, he can be the Assistant Chief Minister and the Minister for foreign affairs, without affecting the Troy rule.
Yeah, the difficulty I see as a member of the public, I want to be represented, I want my views, and I want some participation in this process. And I see if things are done by ministerial fiat, in other words, they're creating effectively ministers, that's not really, it doesn't come from the public, they don't agree it, the terms of reference, their policies they're going to be put forward are going to get more and more vague. That's why I would think you need a clear set of rules for a Ministry of Justice. There ought to be a clear set of rules for the Foreign Minister. I know they have established some sort of principles. They published it a few weeks ago.
It has a sort of sub-department, it has its own department within the Chief Minister's department. I think it's probably right that the politician representing that should have the appropriate title, an easily recognisable title overseas. Incidentally, a little bit of research I did do, some small jurisdictions actually have politicians have smaller cabinets or council of ministers and politicians will often hold 2 or 3 ministerial posts. I'm not saying that would be right for us, but it's something that does happen quite successfully.
If this proceeded and is taken up with the Chief Minister's office, give it support, do you have anybody in mind to be a minister?
No, I wouldn't.
You're not volunteering?
No. I'll be sounding a bit like yes, Minister. I have no ambition in that particular direction at present.
Because one of the ironies, the Home Office Senator de Marcon was uniquely the lawyer in the States, and something he found out that when he wanted legal advice in his department, there was no legal advice offered. It was fortunate, he said, that he was a lawyer. He could actually he could research his own laws because he was the knowledge.
There you are. You've mentioned a potentially good candidate for Justice Minister, because Ian de Marco, in my opinion, is a very fair man, very knowledgeable on the law.
Okay, that's the budget is of course another issue. You'll be creating, if there was to be a department. We've got an innovation fund. Perhaps this is a subject which ought to go for innovation funding, is it?
I think that sounds like a good idea, but I don't think its chance of success, being classed as an innovative idea by the relevant body, would succeed. But we can try. But I think justice is at the heart of our ability to govern ourselves. If we can't deliver political accountability for justice, then we have to ask questions. Now, this isn't I'm not having a go at the current justice system. I think our court system must remain, the judiciary must remain absolutely independent. Absolutely independent. There's no question about that at all. But the system and the political oversight needs to be in place. In fact, it could be argued that our Justice Minister is indeed the Attorney General.
Do you have had the response so far from Jersey lawyers? I mean, obviously this will affect them.
The comments I've received have generally been supportive. In fact, I haven't had any negative feedback. The only challenge, I think, is to persuade the State's Assembly that it's a good idea, and that the Chief Minister is given the opportunity to come back with a proposition, and my proposition in itself gives to the end of July for him to do that.
So that's it. So things will happen this summer.
Yes, I hope so.
Okay, we'll leave that there. Something else I want to discuss with you.